Hello, welcome to today's HR Huddle. I'm Tamera Loerzel, and with me is my colleague Samantha Mansfield. And we are here today to talk to HR professionals and talent leaders and maybe managers and supervisors because of the topic about your performance feedback tools and mechanisms, I guess, mediums maybe. We know that year end can start to be a time for performance evaluations and performance reviews. We also know after peak periods is another critical time to provide feedback. And we at Convergence Coaching would like you to provide feedback all the time. And so as we've been talking to leaders and HR professionals and managers and partners that we're coaching in our coaching programs, one of the things that many firms are stepping back and assessing is what is the mechanism or the form or the HRIS system? How are we capturing it, our capture tool to capture feedback, and what kind of structure are we using, and what kind of changes could we make to it to be more effective in providing the feedback, making it more actionable, things like that. So we just thought we would stop and spend some time today on that and give you some ideas and places to look as you might be evaluating these yourself right now. So Samantha, what else would you add for that setup?
Well, I think some firms are looking at it right now because maybe you've got post-peak season evaluations or feedback you're going to give, or maybe you've got year-end evaluations that are coming up for different team members. And so it's a nice time prior to that, or maybe while you're going through it, to go ahead and document what's working and what's not working with our current mechanism. And so some of the questions that have really emerged is it can be hard enough to get leaders to give feedback, right, Tamara? I mean, we run into that all the time. So we don't want a process or a form to inhibit people any further on that, right? So we want to make sure that the form and the tool is supportive of giving feedback, not a barrier to doing so. And so I would encourage that as you're looking at it, what do we use to document feedback? And we're not documenting every bit of feedback that we give, but for the feedback that we want to make sure is memorialized, that we are capturing it, that the tools that we're using are helpful. They're helpful to driving performance. They're helpful to tracking how we're progressing, and they're not, again, a stumbling block to people actually giving it. So I've been getting a number of questions around this lately, so I love that we're going to talk about it.
Well, Samantha, I think I'm going to start with year end, and then maybe we can look at it and say, how do we apply some of those concepts to more of the mid-year or after peak periods or after big engagements, and see how we might apply some of those ideas. Because I think one of the things for year-end reviews that has been a trend is to move away from multi-rater feedback. And especially because we often use a 5-point, some people use 10-point, and we don't think that says much, but even a 5-point scale, what happens is, guess what we all pick? Number 3. Right in the middle, exactly. And so it's like, okay, that we're on the fence. It's almost like we're on the fence.
Or I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Right.
I don't want
to decide
one way or the other.
I want to take a stand. That's exactly right. So if we're going to do multi-raters, we would say do a 4-point scale, because then I'm 1 or 2, which is needs improvement, 3 or 4, which I'm doing well. 4 probably means I am ready for a promotion in that area. So we'd have to have consistent 4s on a scale of 1 to 4 to say, hey, you are potential, for a promotion or increased responsibility or whatever that might be. And so that's one thing to consider. But also the challenge with it, and the reason we like to either minimize it or maybe, move away from it to some degree, is because it doesn't give us actionable feedback. It gives us observation, it gives us assessment, but it doesn't give us the actions, which is, I think, one of the things we want to drill down here today, is to talk about how do we make this more actionable. And so if it's a 1 or a 2, we would say you have to give an example, and what would you want them to do to improve it? so they know how to improve it. Because it could be something, this is a very generic one, but we see it, communication. Need to improve communication. Okay. Is it my verbal communication? Is it written communication? Is it with clients? Is it internal? Is it too informal? Is it too choppy? Is it have grammar errors and spelling errors? Is it not professional? And by the way, that's vague also. So how is it not professional? So we need to say what it is, but even like demonstrates technical competence for their level that they are in. 4 through 3, okay, what else do they need to do to get to a 4 then? Like that's missing. So that's our struggle with the multi-rater. But at least if I'm on a 4-point scale, I can go 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's one thing we would look at for our end of the year reviews. What would you add to the
Well, and so if that's going to be a change that you would make, the other piece is make sure you roll out and have communications across the team on this at different levels. So one, make sure that you're talking to management about how to use the 4-point scale and that the expectation is because we want to help people to be able to get to that next level instead of them having the expectation, I've been here 3 years, shouldn't I be going into the senior role? Or, hey, I thought I've done everything and I'm ready to go up to be principal. Why is that not happening? Right. So if we're going to adjust the way we're doing the feedback, like what Tamera, you were just saying, then that's what we want to lay out is so people understand, hey, we're doing this to make sure that we're giving everybody better feedback. And then you got to go talk to everybody that's going to start getting this feedback, because where maybe they were used to that neutral, I'm neither the rock star or maybe I'm not having trouble. And now all of a sudden I might be in that lower level of the 1s and 2s where I have areas to work on. And that could be very defeating to their morale, especially if they're feeling that they haven't really gotten the specificity of the feedback you were just talking about. So I would say that if you're making this change, which is an excellent change to make because it really does help with the quality of the feedback that we're giving, make sure that we also are putting a communication plan together of how we're going to roll that out and what people can expect. And one of them is to say it would be anticipated that we're going to have some 2s, perhaps if you're trying to get to that next level and there are some areas to work on. And that doesn't mean you're failing, because we can talk to the perfectionists on our team and you get a 2 in an area, and that's how they can take that, right? They can take that as, oh, that just marked everything else that I do. I'm not performing well enough. And so it's good to know your people, but also to make sure that you're blanketly sharing those kinds of expectations so that people don't overreact to that change and that feedback. And I just think it's a really important 2-prong element if you're going to make that change on your feedback forms.
I also think it's important to acknowledge that there are high raters and there are low raters. That's okay. And I know we worry about that. And if we put definition around it, like what you're saying, Samantha, I think that can help because we can say, a 2 means, they need to improve, at this level. 3 means they're progressing at this level, towards the next one. 4 means they're probably ready. Like we need some kind of definition. But even then, some of us are harsh raters. We have had harsh graders in school, so we know that. Like I could get an A+ from Samantha, but from Emily, I'm going to get a C-. And so that's just how it is. But I can average them. We're still looking for the average, and we're still looking for themes. So we don't worry about that too much. And I just want to say that because sometimes we get, worried, wringing hands about that. And then I think the other thing is, how do we get that specificity? So like if they provide a 1 or a 2, they need to provide examples with specific actions they would like to see to improve, like what's missing. I think that would be helpful. And for a 3, it's like, what's next? What's next? To advance at that level. So if we could get that kind of specificity on the feedback, on the examples we're looking for, I think that you'll get a better quality of feedback. Now, another form we've used, and we've talked about it here, and we teach it, is keep, stop, start. And so it could be a combination of multi-raters if you're using those against competencies. By the way, we didn't say that, but you would map them to your competencies And so I could have an overall competency. Maybe it's technical and I've got 3 or 4 things underneath it, or, leadership and it's got 3 or 4 things underneath it. Or value. Exactly. Yes. And values, might go under leadership, but we'd have to determine that exactly, right? Where does that fit? But another thing you could use is keep, stop, start. What are the top 3 things this person should continue doing that they do well? What are 3 things they should stop doing? If anything, because often stop turns into starts, and then no more than 3 starts. And we have to usually have some stops because they need to delegate. Sometimes stops can be delegated so they can take on responsibility. But that's another way to get to actionable feedback. And so you could have a combination of it. Now, if you ask enough open-ended questions with they're specific and tailored, like we're talking about with the multi-raters, you might not need to do that. Or you could say, what most one thing is, this person known for that, is a strength or that they contribute. What one thing would you say for them to develop, kind of as a summary? You could do that as well. We know it's harder to compile. If I get 6 to 8 people to input to these, we know it's harder to compile these. So we don't want a book by every person. I know that's challenging, but the more specificity and examples we get, the better. When we do the 360s in our leadership programs and our individual coaching programs, we often get told this is the most specific, comprehensive feedback we get because of the level, of detail and examples that we are able to elicit with it. So the only other thing I would say about end of year, and then you can add to it, and then we can start to look to see how we apply it. But the only other thing I would add is no surprises. So it's feedback, it's a review, which means we already talked about it. So this isn't the time to bring up things that you've been needing to talk to them about, or that you've been hoping they would improve, but haven't. We didn't talk to them at the end of the spring peak period, and now it's the end of the fall peak period. Oh, we'll just wait until we get into the end of the year evaluations. No, please no. There's a rule.
Right.
No surprises. If we haven't said it to them, it doesn't get to go on the review because it's a review. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, no, it's a really great point. And I would say that as we look at that and also look into how we can use a review form or whatever the technique is to make sure that we are giving feedback through the year, like you said, Tamera, so this is a review at the end of the year, is that I've heard some folks try and minimize how much comments or the open-ended questions are included in the forms. Because like you said, Tamera, it does get harder to be able to aggregate the comments. And then you have some individuals that might be more verbose in what they're saying. And then you have others that don't say really anything. They just give the ratings and that's it. So I would caution on going to the side of, well, let's just keep it as objective as possible and make it, the 4-point scale, or, are they improving, or, status quo, or those kinds of things where it's only check the box, because that again can be demoralizing to the team, as well as it does not give them enough specificity to know where they're improving. And especially if you have a coachee, like I have a few in our current TLP, that their number one motivator is growth and responsibility. And so if they're not getting that because there's something happening, but nobody's telling them what that feedback is, you're going to lose these rising stars. And so it's just really important to make sure that in our effort to make it as objective as possible and as manageable as possible, that we don't eliminate all the comments. And then in that same vein, another piece that I've been hearing is firms really wanting to encourage and enable management to give more feedback, which I think is phenomenal. And I'm hearing all kinds of ideas of what they're coming up with. Again, phenomenal. One thing we have to watch for is that if we use a form because you're trying to do a KPI and keep track of, is leadership giving the feedback? Like, is it happening? So we're trying to track it. We have to be really careful that we don't make the form so arduous that it actually prevents the feedback from happening, because the leader or whoever, right? Feedback can go in all directions. But if they're feeling like it's so laborious to have to fill out the form and how it's stored and so forth that they don't use it, and then therefore they feel like, well, I didn't fill it out, so I'm not even giving the feedback, then we miss the boat, right? So we want to be careful about that. We want to keep the form simple, especially in that feedback we're giving throughout the year, so that it can be a really straight to the point. What's the feedback? And then what's the action? I think that's the other piece, is sometimes we miss the action, and that might be something to add to your form or your
Or
people
recap.
management or
If
your
we're just doing
performance.
a recap, maybe we don't have a form, or maybe we don't have a HRIS, we would do a recap because
Yeah.
we don't have that. Yes.
Yes. And so we're documenting, here is the action. And here's when we're going to check in on this again. And that's the other one that we do is, as that person who gave the feedback, they're kind of sitting there, whew, okay, I did it. Now I just hope, prayer and a wing, like that they're just going to go make improvement. But the feedback's not done. We do need to check in and give feedback on how the person is tracking against the agreed upon areas of improvement. And that is missing too. So what's that date that we're going to come back together and we're going to see how this is progressing? And so I would really encourage that whatever the mechanism is that you're guiding your leadership and supporting them, make sure those elements are on there. What's the action, and when are we going to follow up to see how it's progressing?
I'd expand action to be, what's the action? Because it might be activity based, or what's the result or deliverable or output that I'm looking for? Because I might be looking for a different result. If they're just starting something, I might want them to try some things. There might be several actions to go take, but I'm often looking for a specific result or some kind of deliverable or different output on an engagement, maybe. And so, yes, that level of specificity on what we're looking for would be helpful. And then the date, we're going to check in and get it on the calendar so that we have it. And we do like keeping it that simple. I don't want it in an arduous form, but we do need a capture tool. So whether it's a recap in email, or whether it's your HRIS, or you have some kind of intranet form, but it just helps you keep on track. But we want it to be simple as possible to be able to do it. On the year-end performance evaluation, it might be helpful to have a PDF output of what the review is, because some people like to think about it, or process it or write it down or whatever before they go fill it out if it's an online form. So that's something else to think about as well, is do we provide that to the reviewers to be able to have that, and then having regular touch points. And when you start to think about it this way, like, here's what you're doing well, continue to do that, and then here's the thing or two or three things to improve, to progress, or to be at your level. I expect you as a supervisor to now be able to do these things. So let's evaluate that in the next 30 days or 60 days, and we'll meet to see how you're doing with it. And we wouldn't wait. I know it's hard with peak periods, but if you wait till the complete end of it, you're not catching things that you could, they could improve right then. And often we hear from those people, because we do, leadership programs for seniors and supervisors. I would like to get feedback sooner than May, because I could have corrected that back in March. But nobody ever told me.
They want smaller pieces instead of getting this deluge of everything I needed to fix.
But it is more absorbable. You're exactly right. It's more absorbable. So, but it'll save your managers and your partners time as well. I know the argument is, I don't have time during peak period to give feedback, but I have time to correct all their mistakes. So, not true. Let's move some of that time up here. But where I was going is, if we start to do this, it becomes more continuous feedback. And it does become easier.
Yeah, it's a habit. You start to build that. Yeah.
Yes. And it's a culture, and it's a relationship, and it's how we're going to get better. And we want to be in sync. You get more in sync, so you have more smooth communication. So I think that's important as well. And then I think the big things, Samantha, I think we wanted to talk about goal setting. There are things, and I don't know if it's annual goals or if it's semi-annual goals. are broken up. Maybe it's annual goals broken up into milestones of what they're going to produce. But, what am I going to focus on? So if we do end of the year reviews and we're going to set some goals, between now and June, let's say, again, I think we need to get those as specific and measurable as possible. And they're not all measures that I can spit out of a system, financial system, or, they're not all hours based. We'd like you to move away from hours based goals anyway. But how can we make them measurable? And again, if you go back to, if it's activity based, what are the actions, or what are the outputs, results, and deliverables you want to see them produce? And then what are the steps they're going to take? That's where the actions come in. What are the steps? What are the milestones that we're going to see that are going to contribute to that end result? And we have a goal setting form that we will include as a link to this HR Huddle that you can look at. And it's question number 2 in the goal setting form that has them think through what are the things that I need to do between now and then. So now in June, in my example, to produce that output or that result in June. And maybe it is like, I'll go back to my technical, progression. Maybe I need to learn certain kinds of tax returns or get exposure to it. I can list those and say, I'm going to talk to these 3 partners because they work on these 3 different kinds of clients, and try to get assigned to at least 2 of those. Like I can start to get it measurable to say, how can I facilitate that? So we can make anything measurable. And if we start to look at what's the output we're looking for.
Yeah. And I appreciated how you just gave the examples of how to make it specific, because one of the things I see an awful lot as I review goals, like you said, with our coachees, is that, well, I'm going to enhance my listening. I can't support you as a coach, your manager, your partner. They can't support you if listening is a goal, which is a fantastic goal, and one that many people may need to work on. But with that, you can choose very specific things that you will do, those actions that you said, or an outcome that you're looking for as a result of working on that. So if you're working with somebody that's working on their goals, then that's some feedback that you could look at when you're looking at their answers. If you're using our form, the answers to their question 2, what am I specifically going to go do? And watch for those just general statements of, well, I'm going to get better. I'm going to build more relationships with people. Yeah, I'm going to improve. And that's where you say, well, how will you know they improve? And a lot of times you get deer in the headlights. I don't know. And that's a great way that you can really collaborate with your team. And then maybe help somebody who feels like, well, goal setting, I don't write goals. Goals aren't helpful to me. Well, it might be because we don't have enough specificity to really make them worthwhile. So I just wanted to throw that in there as a way you can support people in really doing quality goal development.
And there are some people that are really good at goals. And so you could leverage them as well, because they could help make them specific. They can hear it from a SMART goal perspective on some of those more squishy ones like listening or communication or whatever it might be. But again, if we think about the output, what's the output or result we're looking for? I think then you can start to say, okay, what am I going to need to do to get there? Which is a great skill to develop. So we would love to hear if there's anything you're doing as you're reviewing and assessing your feedback mechanisms. So please reach out and share that with us. Or if you have questions about anything that we shared, we will include that goal setting template. And it keeps stop-start form. I think we should include that too. And then, we'll probably continue this topic because I think it applies in a whole bunch of different areas. So, and if you have other topics you'd like us to discuss on the HR Huddle, please reach out to us. Let us know. Otherwise, have a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Thanks.